Hi, welcome back to the Effective English Email course. I'm Steve, and I'm here talking about English structures for email. So now we're going to actually get into the nuts and bolts of the actual English that you're going to use in email. So the topics that we're going to talk about: sentence structures, articles and prepositions. These are the two things that give people the most difficulty around English. I'm going to give you a pretty simple guideline for articles, and I'm going to give you a tool that's going to help you never have a mistake with a preposition again if you use it regularly. And then we're going to talk a little bit just about using plain English in email and how important that is. Okay, so let's jump into sentence structures. So there are really four types of sentence structures. And in academia, in academic English, at all levels, undergraduate, graduate, even, PhDs and researchers, professors, we have this focus in our studies of English and vocabulary towards bigger vocabularies, more complex vocabularies, right? This is actually going to hurt you when it comes to writing email, writing effective, simple, clear email. One thing you can do to help with that is just to focus on sentence structure. Now, I know the concept of sentence structure is very basic and probably review for you, but I want you to really consider it primary in your mind as you're drafting an email. Try to keep sentence structures to, simple compound sentences. A complex sentence here and there is probably okay, but I would say no compound complex sentences, okay? So just to review, you can see some examples I've written. There's a simple sentence with one main clause. It says the audit report is due on Friday. Another example, the TPS and audit reports are due on Friday. Okay, so we can have multiple subjects, we can have plural, we can have singular, and still be, a main or independent clause. The TPS and the TPS and audit reports are due Thursday and Friday, respectively. I love that word respectively, by the way. If you're doing any kind of academic writing, it's a great word to help you organize information in your sentences. Then a compound sentence is going to have two main clauses. Audit reports are due on Thursday, so we will cater dinner for those staying late. Inclement weather is expected tomorrow, but audit reports are still due on Thursday. Okay? Complex has a main clause plus one or more subordinate clauses. Audit reports are due on Thursday, when inclement weather is expected. Okay? Compound complex, two main plus one or more subordinate clauses. Severe weather is expected tomorrow, but audit reports are still due on Thursday, thus, auditors should prepare to work from home tomorrow if necessary. Okay? This is the kind of sentence structure that you should just not use in email. You should really break this into smaller sentences. Now, when it comes to, academic article writing, so you're publishing your articles in academic journals, I always recommend variation in the sentence structure. Okay? So you do want compound complex. You do want complex, you do want compound, you do want simple sentences. You want a variety of all of them. But for email, you want more simple, more compound, less complex and compound complex. Okay? Especially that compound complex. Right? So, how do we make these? As we talked about, the simple is just one main clause. Compound sentence, you can use a comma plus a coordinator. And the coordinators you see here are for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. Also known as fanboys, right? Fanboys. Fanboys. Those are the coordinators. You can use only a semicolon, and you can use a semicolon plus a conjunctive adverb. However, for email, I would strongly recommend against using semicolons at all in emails. Okay, semicolons seem very formal. Right? They seem very formal, very technical. So for email, which is more casual, even if you're talking with somebody that's a superior to you, I would just not use a semicolon. Definitely not too much. If you used one, it might be okay. But, don't use semicolons too much at all. So for our purposes, just think about the fanboys, using the fanboys with the comma for compound sentences. For your complex sentences, you're going to use adverb clauses, adjective clauses, and noun clauses to kind of pull those sentences together. And for each of those, respectively, you have some bullet points below with the associated words to kind of hold that together. And then the compound complex combines all of those together. And again, we're not going to use the compound complex for email. So really just think about simple, compound, and complex sentences for your emailing purposes. Okay. Email structures. Again, as simple as possible for email. If you're having a hard time with the vocabulary and the grammar of a sentence, break it into smaller parts, right? Smaller, simpler is okay. Do not rely on machine translators. Google Translate, yes, it's getting better and better, but it still has a really hard time with complicated sentence structures, okay? So those compound complex sentence structures just are a disaster when you use a machine translator like Google Translate. Right? You might get away with it for some of the simpler sentences, but just yet another reason to, number one, don't rely on machine translators too much, and number two, don't use compound complex sentence structures in your emails. Right? Machine translators, it's okay to use those, especially if you're receiving messages. So translating into your native language, the machine translations are more useful. But for translating out of the native language into the second language, there's still issues with that. Okay, so moving on to article use. I used to try to present all of the rules around article use, and I found it very counterproductive. My students really learned very little from doing that. So I'm going to try it a little bit different way in this course. And I'm going to say articles are basically adjectives, okay? So an adjectives that describes a noun. The is a definite article, and it's used to describe specific nouns. So what you're doing when you're using the word the is you're saying that this noun, I mean a specific thing when I'm talking about this noun. Or un, the indefinite articles, are marking that noun as non-specific. Okay? So an article identifies a noun as either being specific or not. And un, the difference is really simple. It's just if the first sound of the next word is a vowel or not. If it's a vowel, you would use un. If it's a consonant, you would use a. And it's the sound. So it's not necessarily the spelling. Right? Sometimes you see some weird situations where they've used un and it begins with a consonant and you think, oh, is that really right? But if the first sound is a vowel sound, then yes, it is correct. Right. Okay, so some examples. The conference was canceled versus a conference was canceled. If we're using the conference was canceled, we can assume that this refers to a specific conference. And if I receive an email and then my boss is saying the conference was canceled, it's like, okay, I'm probably disappointed about this because I was maybe going to go to it. Maybe I was going to go to it, or maybe my boss was going to it, and we all knew that he or she was going to it, right? Anyway, the conference, everybody knows exactly which conference is being described. A conference, maybe you work for the hotel or the conference center, and you don't even know what the conference is. You just know that you have to go to work that day. But you get a call the week before, and they say, oh, a conference was canceled, so we don't need you to come into work on Monday, right? In that situation, a conference was canceled would be better, right? So, means that we're not exactly sure which conference has been canceled, but we probably don't need to know either. It probably doesn't matter. Right? For the, it does matter. The conference is a specific conference, and it matters. It's pretty important to my life that conference was canceled. Prepositions. I have yet to find a good, simple way to explain prepositions. Prepositions, I am firmly convinced after many years of giving workshops on academic English writing and teaching, English and teaching political science through English, I still have yet to find a way that really effectively, intellectually can explain prepositions and how they work. The main thing is practice. You just have to practice. Practice, practice, practice. But remember, practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent. Okay, so you have to make sure that you're practicing the right way to do it. This means getting some exercises and going through the exercises and check and also correct yourself as you go. So if you have a list of like 10 sentences and you have to fill in the prepositions, okay, don't just rush through them and then look at the answers and then try it again. Look at the answers, see which ones you missed, and then rewrite those sentences. Okay, this is called deliberate practice, right? And this is the way that you really make sure that you're getting those proper habits around preposition use. Okay. Now, that being said, I have a pretty awesome trick for you. Right? I've got a trick for using prepositions that you're really going to like, right? And that's something called Google Books Ngram Viewer. And I'm actually going to bring up Google Books and I'm going to show you this live in my web browser. So I've got Google Chrome open. I'm going to come to the search window, and because I don't know the exact address for it, I'm just going to put Google Books Ngram Viewer. Ngram, one word. Okay. And it's going to bring up my results. I just want to click on the first one here. Again, my computer's running a little bit slow because of the screencast software. Okay, so here you go. So you have comma-separated phrases. And what the Ngram Viewer is, it's going to show you how common each of the phrases is in books over time. Okay? So you can see here Albert Einstein compared to Sherlock Holmes and Frankenstein. You can see Frankenstein is more popular than both Albert Einstein and Sherlock Holmes. So here's what you can do. Here's the trick. I'm going to enter on the previous page versus in the previous page. And I'll even add by the previous. Okay? I'm going to click this search lots of books. And we'll see the answer. Okay, there we go. Look at this. So if you're not sure whether it would be on the previous page or in the previous page, put it into Ngram Viewer. This is quite clear as to what is most likely the correct answer, right? This means that on the previous page has been used many, many more times in books over the past couple of 100 years than the other options, right? So this is a pretty clear indicator of what the right answer is going to be, okay? So use Ngram Viewer to check your prepositions if you're not sure, and you will never make another mistake with prepositions. Okay, moving on. Now we're going to talk about using plain English. And specifically, I'm going to have you eliminate wordiness, redundancies, and expensive words. Okay. I'm going to explain both of these in more detail. So fixing wordiness. Look at this example. Peter, I looked into it and figured out that the amorphous organic matter in the refrigerator is a several months old sandwich that you left in the refrigerator. Okay? So first, if we talk about wordiness. These are strings of words, phrases where there are just way too many words. It's very easy to summarize this in just one or two words and make it much simpler to read. So we can change, I looked into it and figured out that to I discovered. I discovered that. Or I figured out that even would be okay, right? So I discovered that the amorphous organic matter in the refrigerator is a 3-month-old sandwich that you left in the refrigerator. That fixes wordiness. Okay. This same phrase has other problems, though. So what about redundancy? Redundancy is where the same word or phrase is used multiple times in not just a sentence, it could be a paragraph, right? In this case, we have in the refrigerator twice. Okay, so we need to get rid of one of those. And so I fixed it like this. It just has in the refrigerator is a several months old sandwich that you left there. Right? So one of those refrigerators is changed to there, and that fixes the redundancy. Finally, expensive words. Now, because this is 3 words, this could have also been wordy, but I'm just using it to talk about expensive words. When I was in grade school, one of my English teachers, I remember very clearly, she talked about words being related to money. So they were 5-cent words, 10-cent words, and 25-cent words. You get a word like amorphous, that's like a 50-cent word, okay? I know what that means, okay? I know the Latin. I know the base form of these different, I know the different bases involved here. I know a means without, morph means shape, and so on, right? But when I'm reading this in a block of text, right, it makes the whole text just get a little bit more difficult, okay? So there's a strong incentive to, even though I know what it means, the person I'm sending it to probably knows what it means too, I have a very important reason why I should just make it simpler, right? Because it makes the whole thing more difficult to read. So I can simplify all of this by saying gunk, right? Gunk, stuff, thing, right? These kinds of words would describe that amorphous thing in the refrigerator. Okay, so full revision. So we start with, now I'm going to read through this. Just listen to think about how hard it is to listen to me speaking this sentence, okay? Try not to get hung up on the meaning of the sentence, because I'm going to compare the first version with my revision. I looked into it and figured out that the amorphous organic matter in the refrigerator is a several months old sandwich that you left in the refrigerator. Compare that to, I discovered that the gunk is a sandwich you left in the refrigerator 3 months ago. Much, much more simple and easier to understand, okay? And our emails should be more like this. Okay, so we've talked about sentence structures for email, articles and prepositions, and especially that Ngram viewer tip, right? That's a really great tip for using Ngram for dealing with prepositions, and how we can use plain English in our emails to increase the effectiveness of our emails and communicating those messages that we want to get across.